Hey, it's me, I am back, and I wanted to carry on talking about advertising. Advertising your book. How do you do it? So I made that video about how Amazon has now become a pay-to-play platform. And I found out today there are actually 45 million ebooks on Amazon. And so if you want to know why somebody like me or Amanda Hocking found it much easier to become successful, is because I started publishing in 2013, and that was when there were only 2 million ebooks available on Amazon, and now there are 45 million. That's crazy. And throw in the fact that Amazon has pretty much eliminated the organic discoverability, especially of fiction books. That means it's practically impossible to get your book in front of people unless you are paying to do some advertising. And yeah, it's a really important topic to talk about, because I know so many people who've written books, published them, have them on Amazon, and they're like, what now? What do we do? And so many people ask me that question, and then I get a lot of other people who ask me questions that are purely tactical. They're like, okay, so I've got a book, I'm going to start advertising it. Should I use Facebook? Should I use advertising on Amazon? Should I use BookBub? Well, how do I generate my audience? What should my keywords be? What's a good cost per click? And it's like, slow your roll. Those are all really, really important, valid questions, but they're all tactics. You have to think strategy. One of the advantages I had, aside from starting early, was the fact that before I threw my lot in as a self-published author, I spent 20 years in advertising and marketing, and I know advertising. The thing that gives me even more of an advantage is I started my advertising career before social media became a thing. Like, I started out writing and selling radio spots and radio commercials. And so that was the old school advertising. It was after the dot-com boom, but it was like old school advertising. Back in the day, I had one client who told me that his attitude to advertising was, you throw enough shit at the wall, some of it sticks. Because back before you had all of these analytics and all of these dashboards, it was impossible to tell what advertising worked and what advertising didn't. So, you know, you'd pay to have your product on a billboard, a newspaper advert, a radio commercial, TV, whatever. But instead of sort of over-analyzing all of that, you focused on the message about the product. You focused on why should somebody buy this product. And so I'm saying to you, if you've published a book, you've got it up on Amazon, and you are now thinking like, okay, I want people to read this, I'm willing to step into advertising my book. Before you start getting into the tactical stuff, before you start buying Mark Dawson's course on advertising on Amazon, which is a phenomenal course, by the way, you should stop and take a step back, sit down, maybe have a nice glass of wine, and completely shift your mindset. First-time authors especially, and I speak from experience, tend to go into writing and publishing their book from an author's perspective. They're like, I want to write this book, so I write this book, and then it's like, okay, I want to publish it on Amazon so people will read it, and they'll find a cover that they like, that speaks to them, and they'll love it, and it could be a wonderful piece of art, but the thing is, will it resonate with readers? They'll write a blurb that speaks to them, but is it something that's going to appeal to readers? They'll approach the whole thing from the view of an author, and everything is looked at from that side of things, of creating a book, getting a cover, getting things that all speak to you. But if you want to be a successful self-published author, you have to stop and think of it from the other perspective. You have to think of things as a reader. Because it's a fact that there are millions of readers out there who devour books. And you can absolutely make a living as a self-published author. But you need to have a product, a book, that resonates with a large enough audience of people that their purchases will sustain you and allow you to support your family through writing. So immediately, stop thinking like an author and think like a reader. And this can be a really, really humbling and kind of confusing process when you think about it. What do I mean by think of yourself as a reader? Well, think of the last book you bought. What was the last book you bought? and if you say you haven't bought a book, then you need to start buying books and reading books before you try approaching being an author, because you need to spend as many hours a day reading as you do writing if you want to be successful in this business, and especially writing in the genre that you want to be in. So definitely do that. Read prodigiously. But think about, what was the last book you bought? I know for a fact this book, Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, was the last physical book I bought. And I bought this book because there is a YouTuber called Andrew Kirby who I really like, and he mentioned the fact that he was reading it. And to me, what's that phrase? When you see somebody reading a book that you like, it's like the book recommending a person. And it was kind of the other way around there. I really like Andrew Kirby. I think he's got a lot of really smart things to say. So I was like, okay, if he's reading that, it's probably something I should read. And so far, I've been really enjoying it. The other book I purchased recently was on Kindle, because I do actually buy quite a few books on Kindle. It was The Lost Adventures of James Bond by Mark Edlitz. I bought that. Actually, I got it through Kindle Unlimited, I think. But I bought that based on a recommendation. The Bond Experience channel was having a book launch for this book, because it's got tons of really cool interviews about James Bond during sort of the dark ages when Timothy Dalton finished his second movie, and they had the James Bond Junior TV show and stuff like that. It was kind of a dark age for the James Bond movies, but so many interesting things happened in the background, and these interviews are there, and they're really fascinating and interesting. So that was a book I bought that I really, really enjoyed. I ended up whipping through it in about a day. The next book that I bought was called Sell Like Crazy: How to Get as Many Clients, Customers and Sales as You Can Possibly Handle by Sabri Subi. I bought that book because I was on Facebook, and it came up as an advert, and it grabbed my attention, and the advert was all about how you can sell whatever it is your product is to millions of people. And of course, as an author, you're always looking to try and learn more about how to market your particular product. In this was a sales funnel advert. So what Subri wanted you to do was click through, give your email address, and then pay you $29 for some kind of program. And he said you'd receive a free copy of my book, Sell Like Crazy. And I was like, your book? Interesting. So I completely ignored that funnel. Sorry, Sabri. And I went straight to Amazon and I typed in his name, and up came this book, Sell Like Crazy, which was free on Kindle Unlimited instead of $29. And I bought it and I read it, and actually it's a phenomenal book. It's a phenomenal book for anybody in advertising and marketing. It really, really drills down to some cool things. Another book that I bought recently was That Voodoo That You Do by Jolie Saint-Amand. Yes, which is the first book in the Chateau Rouge series of paranormal romance. Why did I buy that book? Well, as I said, if you want to be a successful writer, you have to be a prodigious reader, and you have to read in your genre. But actually, I chose that book because I was on Mark Dawson's Self-Publishing Formula Facebook group, and we were talking reviews, and this one particular member of that group had said, one of my books got a 1-star review because the characters drank alcohol. And I was like, your characters drank alcohol? Tell me more. And she sent me a link for the book, and I bought it, and I've been reading it. I haven't completed it yet, but it's terrific. It's really good, actually. So I didn't actually realise she's sort of said that line from Anchorman, where it's like, I'm kind of a big deal. Jolie is an established author, so it's no surprise that her book is good, but it is really good, and I'm really pleased I read it. The reason, and finally, I've been reading Ian Fleming's Diamonds Are Forever. This is an old paperback. I had Signet paperback, and that I'm reading because of the #Fleming Reading Challenge, which is again part of the James Bond community. And also I had it out because some of the romance books that I'm writing at the moment have a story arc. It's kind of inspired by a lot of James Bond stuff. The movie of Diamonds Are Forever is all set in Las Vegas, and so there are so many elements of that I kind of want to include in my book, and so it's really useful to look through those things. Right, and those books that I bought in the last month or so. But the interesting thing is, out of all of those, only one of those books did I buy through advertising, and it wasn't even trying to advertise the book. The rest were all through talking to people, getting recommendations, seeing something that interests me. And so when you first start out trying to market and advertise your book, you have to think of it from that perspective. How can I lead somebody from the trail in which they discover books to my book on Amazon? Um, and then you have to start thinking about your book in a different way. What is it about my book that will appeal to a potential reader? Who are my potential readers? And that is something first-time authors often don't think about. They write a book because they want to write it. And my book, Adventure Ready, is a perfect example of that. I wanted to write an old-school saint-type adventure story with a plucky ginger hero. And it was hugely autobiographical about this young man in Paris, and he arrives there and he's fat and geeky, and over the course of a year-long adventure he gets he learns and grows, and it's a book I wanted to write, and I'm proud of it, and I kind of like it, but it's not necessarily a book people are looking for. And you should never write a book specifically to appeal to somebody, but you should write a book that would appeal to somebody, if that makes any sense. You have to drill down and figure out what is it about your book that is going to appeal to a potential reader. With romance books, it's always about, the reader wants a book that has a happily ever after, and what you have to do is present it to them and present like a mismatched couple who face some thing that they have to overcome, and you want to read that book because you know they will overcome it and be happily ever after. An adventure novel, so this is a romance book, and so as a romance book that's how I marketed it. But as a men's adventure book, it's like you want the heroes to ride off into the sunset, and you want it to be cool and have guns and explosions, and in this case the US Navy's first hydrofoil. So hopefully there's something about your book that would interest and appeal to other people, but think about it from the perspective of a reader. Think about, why did you buy the last book that you bought? And then think about it as well, why did you read the last book you read? I read this one, I already owned it. Because buying books and reading books are two entirely separate things. And I know so many people will buy a book like this to have it on their bookshelf because, Ellen recommended it, and my guy Andrew Kirby read it, so I'm like, I want this on my bookshelf because it represents that maybe I'm the same sort of person as them. So buying a book for the validation that the book gives you is one thing, but reading a book is something very, very different, and I'm very pleased I read this book. Think about it from that perspective. Who would your book appeal to? How do you find those people? Where do you reach them? And once you start thinking like that, the whole game changes. There's never been a better time to be a self-published author, because the opportunity to put your book in front of potential readers has never been more democratized. But what you have to remember is, being an author especially is a really, really challenging thing to do, because there is a lot of competition, there's a lot of noise, and it's worth remembering that even the traditional publishers, before the invention of the Amazon Kindle and everything like that, only about 50% of the books that they publish would ever actually make a profit. And over the years that has got steadily worse for them, because they are a dying dinosaur of an industry. These days it's practically impossible to get traditionally published by one of the big houses, because they are so worried about losing money. So they will chase famous people who already have, an established following. They'll chase self-published authors who've made it to a certain point because they know that people will buy their books. They will only chase a sure thing. As a self-published author, of course, you have the opportunity to make it on your own, and you have the opportunity to do so in a far better way than traditional publishing could ever offer you as an author. But it's not easy. It's difficult. And you really have to shift the mindsets and think like a reader. Start doing your reading, start doing your research, and have empathy for people who might read the books, and figure out what it is that is going to hook them. Yeah, that's all I wanted to cover, but I think it is really, really important. The secret to advertising your book successfully is to find your tribe out there. Whatever it is that you write that is your thing, that is your crazy inspiration for writing, there is going to be a group of people out there who want to read it, who are on the same wavelength as you. It's like, I've always been made fun of my entire life for being such a ridiculous James Bond fan, and then I found the Bond community, and it's like hundreds of people who are super into the same things that I'm into, and they're like my tribe. And your tribe exists out there as well, and if they are avid readers, then now is the time to reach them. But it can be a rough journey. But anyway, I'm going to go on that journey with you, and in fact, I've been thinking about it, and I'd originally had the hat on as a successful romance author. So when this book, I published it, and it didn't immediately get like a ton of glowing reviews and stuff, and I didn't have a huge catalogue of books to back it up. I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do any advertising with this book, because I knew it would be difficult. But you know what? I should do some advertising of that book and show you what you do if you are starting out, because in many ways I am starting out as a self-published author, because the books that I've already published under my pen name that are successful, that's great, but I need to go through the process again and see if I can follow that success. So I am actually going to start off advertising this book. I'm going to take a stab at advertising this book, You Only Live Once, as well, because Brexit's coming up. And I'm going to start off super small, like you would have to if you were a first-time author, an author who's only got 1 or 2 books out there. If you don't really know what you're doing, I'll show you. But you should start thinking right away, in preparation for the next video I'm going to make, about who is it who wants to read your book? Where is your tribe? And you do have a tribe. You must have written your book inspired by something, probably inspired by other writers. This book, for example, it's a classic romance novel, and I followed the beats of a romance book. It is a romance book 100%. However, I was very, very much inspired by Clive Cussler and those kind of adventure books. The story itself, and you wouldn't know this, it follows kind of like the story of Star Wars, and I've got a few homages of Star Wars in there. And so I know that there are a bunch of really weird, nerdy people like me who are into Star Wars and Clive Cussler and adventure books who are going to read that and be like, yeah, I get this. And I have to find them. And I've already found the audience for my romance books, and it tends to be a little easier to find your audience amongst romance readers, because there are more of them. They're avid readers. They're some of the coolest, most passionate people in the world. But there's a tribe for this book too. There's even a tribe for this book. I'm actually kind of excited about an advertising idea I have for You Only Live Once. So let's go through it. Let's do it. I'm now rabbiting. I'm wasting your time. I'm going to go. But I'm kind of fired up about it. I think it's kind of exciting to see where we go. So, yeah, join me next time. Think about who the audience of your book is and how we can reach them, and I will show you what to do. Cheers.